I don't know if it cut it off. I was saying, that's why we have to show one another grace. Because I don't even think that people do it intentionally. And I know, especially you know, I know that you don't do it intentionally. I don't do it intentionally, but it happens. And, so I guess like a new revelation he gave me tonight is that when it comes to offense, I feel like us becoming offended is also a sense of a form of idolatry as well, because it kind of, it's a sense of like putting man before the Father again, before God, because we forget that it's really just his love and his spirit that works through people to make them honorable vessels. It's not them in and of themselves. So obviously, if somebody's offending you or they're not perfectly walking in the love of God, it's because they're not one with his spirit. I mean, if we just acknowledge that people really can't do anything apart from him, then you wouldn't really have anything to get offended about, because you don't set expectations with people who don't know him. You should expect that. And if you set any expectations, it should be for people to fail you. That's crazy how we do things like completely the opposite. Like, we set up expectations for people, not to fail us. And that's why you keep getting offended. I don't even want to say heartbroken, but you're definitely heartbroken, but you keep getting offended. And these are not perfect people. Everyone here literally is fallen. Everyone here is in need of Jesus. And to be honest, I don't think anybody's ever going to be showing that love perfectly unless they're just really mature saints before they get taken from this earth. I mean, they can get to that point, definitely. The Bible does say to, perfect ourselves in love, so it is possible. But for the most part, the majority of the church, they're not going to be mature saints before we leave, before we die, before, the Lord comes back. So that's actually why he tells us to just give everyone grace. The grace basically covers those faults. It says love covers a multitude of sins. And sin is just not loving God and not loving people perfectly. And the fact that the Bible tells us that his love and his grace already covers that, you have to walk in that grace for yourself and for other people. So it is idolatry, because when you're offended, you put the attention back on the person when they're just like you. They're faulty just like you are. They may not even hurt you intentionally. So what makes it a humble, reminder and experience is that, we all need God. We all need his strength and his ability to even, love properly. So pray for them. Don't see it as an opportunity to get offended. When you have that kind of truth in your heart, that we all need the Father in order to really do anything, there's not much room for offense, because that grace and that love bubble is already covering your heart. It's already there for people, because we understand that reality, that we need the King, we need Yahweh for everything. We need the Creator for everything. So if you failed me in some point, give him a hug, God bless you, brother. Maybe a kiss on the cheek, pray for him, like it's okay. Like, we are going to stumble and falter without him. And I think it just humbles us. And I think that's beautiful, because it reminds you of how much we really do need him. And it encourages you to continue walking with Jesus. It's not an opportunity to beat up on the person or to beat up on yourself because you didn't love somebody perfectly. And I'm going to use that in a general sense, because really the only two sins that exist is not loving the Father perfectly and not loving people perfectly. That's it. Jesus said that, all of the law hangs upon these two commandments. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So that's really the only two sins. Now, there's a lot of details of how you could not love somebody. But, his grace through his blood has already covered those faults, is what he's saying. So there's a blanket of grace that exists in the spirit that people don't even know about because they're in spiritual darkness. That's crazy to think about. It's already available to them by faith, and they're not walking in it at all. So there is a revelation, which is already in the Bible, but it's just kind of crazy how something can be right in front of your face, but you don't really see it unless that veil is pulled back. That we all need Yahweh. We all need the Father as our creator. We all need to walk in his strength and his power and his love and his grace that he made available and open to all of us through his son's shed blood to really do anything worth any kind of merit. So there's no room for offense with anybody, you know. Just recognizing that that person who failed you just needs more of God in their life. So I mean, because we understand our role when it comes to him and our condition, that's actually what's going to motivate you to pray for people, because it's not personal anymore. It's not personal against you. They're not Jesus. They can't love you perfectly. That's why we get offended with people. What we're really telling people when they offend us is, I'm angry at you because you did not love me perfectly the way that you're supposed to. Well, of course they didn't. They can't do that without Jesus. So just give the person some grace and love them, pray for them. We're all one. We're all the same. We're all just as faulty and flawed. And I think that we should actually encourage one another in our flaws and those faults that we have, to turn to Jesus for more strength in that area, because we all need him as like our light source. You ever seen the movie Avatar? I connected with the Father so much with Avatar because I was like, I love this movie. Because I just see God in everything. I loved how the avatars, when they were worshiping their little spirit, God or creator, I think they called them Awa or some weird name, but I just love the fact that that being, that God for them in Avatar, was what lit up the entire city, the entire village. That's where they got their source of strength. It was the lights for the village, the power for the village. Like literally their very being, their essence came from Awa, and it just taught me how to really worship God and how to walk in the spirit when I saw that movie. And I was like, this is how it's supposed to be. He's in everything, and he should be in and through us, and us in him. So yeah, Avatar is dope. I literally have the Father, like, he shows me himself in literally everything that I watch. Like, it's just really beautiful. There are some Christians that will argue that, but to be honest, if you have a close relationship with God, you will see him in everything. It is definitely a relational thing. But, yeah, he was just speaking to my heart. And we weren't even talking long. Like, I was typing as he was talking to me, and I was like, oh my God, I have to record this. So we're actually going to continue when I turn this off. But that's what he told me so far. He started talking back, and I love when Jesus talks to me because I can feel his peace in my heart all over again. I feel so much better. And I just love talking to him so much. He's just so nice. He's never mad. He's never any of those things. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've ever made him mad. I never seen that side of him, so I can't say I don't know. But yeah, and even me, I was gonna say this. Thank you, Jesus. Okay. Somebody needs to hear this. When you're praying for a wife or a husband, or maybe an aid in the faith in whatever way you may need, pray for somebody that's going to yield to the Father's heart and that has an obedient will, because that's the key when it comes to the people that God puts in our lives and the people that he sends to us, because we do acknowledge that it's going to be him through them to even be all those wonderful things we put on that list. The person would have to have their will entirely surrendered to Jesus to be used as a vessel. Now, they still have their will, they still have their heart, they're still going to love you themselves, they're still going to be in love with you, but it's us opening our hearts to Jesus that allows, whatever barriers or walls or veils that are upon our hearts through spiritual darkness to be cut off, so that his love can come into our hearts and kind of activate that seed that's already there for the person naturally, and that is actually how you love people perfectly. So for those of you who are looking for a spouse, make sure you put that on your list. Somebody that is humble and that they are surrendered and yielded to the heart and the will of God. They will obey him, meaning they will walk in his spirit with whatever he tells them to do. That is how you will experience God through that person, okay? That's all you should be looking for, because it's not going to happen any other way. This is really not. But what was I talking about? I was going to say something. Yeah. We forget about Jesus a lot. A lot. And he does get hurt by it. I can feel it as I'm talking. He does get hurt by it. He's very sad. Unintentionally. And that's how he's actually able to love us continually. That's how he's able to maintain an unconditional love towards us, because we are faulty. We can't love him perfectly. Like, we do forget him and forsake him by doing things like this, just by being forgetful unintentionally. We don't mean to, you know. So that's why he said, love one another as I have loved you. The same grace that I give you for failing me daily, even though you don't mean to. I know that, obviously, because you cannot do anything apart from me. Give that same grace to your fellow brethren. Because sometimes people hurt you, that sister offended you, and they just don't mean to. Now, I'm not going to go into the room of talking about those who do mean to. Okay? Like, we're not talking about that. Let's not even, And like I said, don't expect godly attributes from people who are not walking with him. I mean, it's really just that simple. Your eyes should not be on people so much to the point where you get offended by what they're doing, even the wicked. Meditating on what the wicked and your enemies are doing to you is idolatry. It means that your focus is more on them and what they're able to do, or what their capabilities or lack of capabilities are, rather than on God, which should be, the head of your life. And recognizing that he's the one that works through people to make this place anything worth living in, make this life worthwhile in any way, shape, or form. So it is idolatry to set your heart on man, whether it's in a good way or a bad way. Man cannot do anything for you. You're a man. Can you save the world? And maybe in your heart to want to do it, but you can't do it perfectly, can you? There's a lot of wonderful things I want to do for people, but I always end up offending people because I'm a flawed individual. It doesn't mean that God's seed is not in me or that his spirit is not in me. It clearly is if I have that good soil in my heart to do certain things, but I will not do it perfectly because I'm still Brandy. So when you see good in somebody, the Father just wants you to acknowledge that it's him behind that person. Do not give that glory to them. That's what I was going to say a few minutes ago. Yeah, with this message, a perfect example, because her heart is open to open cavity to Jesus per her relationship. These are his words to me through her. He gets the glory. The only reason you're hearing this message right now is because I opened my heart up to the Lord, and I allowed myself to be a mouthpiece for what he wanted to say. That's what a yielded vessel is. It's his voice, his spirit, his power, his words through the person that they would have never gotten access to unless they yielded themselves to him first. Otherwise, they're a filthy rag. Don't put so much power. You don't give people that much power over your emotions. They will fail your emotions. They will fail your heart. They're going to break your heart, and they're going to disappoint you. Don't give people any power over you to dictate how you're going to treat them, how you're going to love them, how your day is going to go because of what they did and what they said to you. It is a form of idolatry, and we don't even realize it. So yeah, I guess to just, really conclude this message, it feels like he just he was really speaking to me about, he always tells me that how he just feels ignored. He just goes ignored, undetected, because we don't see God behind people and his love for you behind this person or whatever it is he said he was going to do. We just see people, and then when something fails, we get mad at him. It's like, I didn't fail you, they failed you, not me. I love you, I would never fail you. They're just limp bodies until God's Spirit, until he breathes the breath of life into them and makes them a living soul worth being. It's his Spirit in them. You take that away, what do you have? Nothing. A lump of clay dead on the ground. So he really wants to be acknowledged by us, his Spirit and his hand and his power behind the circumstances and the events and the relationships in our lives, and stop creating these idols in our hearts. And I don't say this religiously, because anytime Jesus talks to me, it's not a religious word ever. I don't mean for it to sound like that. Like, oh, get those idols out of your heart. Like, no, it's not like that. It's just, idols to him, he does hate them. But from what he's putting in my heart right now, it's because it separates us from him. It's like something in the way that's blocking you from seeing him, basically. That's why he doesn't want idols in your heart. So, yes, when you are meditating on things and circumstances and people and relationships more than him, to the point where it has, the potential to alter your peace and your state of being, that is idolatry. Which just means that you put something before him to where you can't see him because it's in front of you. You knock altar, could be. You knock the idol out the way and you can't see him. He's there again. So that's where your attention should have remained in the first place. It should have never left him. If somebody was nice to you one day, somebody blessed you one day and gave you some money, or somebody gave you a hug or brought you some food when you needed it was God. It's crazy how, like, we acknowledge God when things like that happen. Like, oh my goodness, like, I didn't have, anything to eat this day, and I was just telling the Lord, like, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just paid all my bills, and somebody just, randomly, bought me a plate of food. Somebody who ain't even saved. You may walk away like, that was such a good man. That was such a nice man. Like, no, God just put it in his heart to do that for you because God loves you. That was him that did that. You were to see that person again tomorrow, they may not even have the same, essence. They may not even have the same thing in their heart for you because God just used them to do that one particular thing. He's the one that quickened their hearts and their spirits to do that. It's not the person. The person is just an empty shell without God's Spirit and his love motivating them to do anything. So that's what he's very passionate about, that he's put in my heart, is that, for some reason we're not identifying him through these things. And if we do, it's very temporary. And he's, I don't feel that he's angry. There could be some people he's angry with. He's not putting that in my heart. It's not anger. It's just, it feels like a sadness. Desire that's just not being met by us as his people. I feel an intense love as well. Just disappointment. Not disappointment like he's setting expectations with us. I just felt certain standards that need to be met that he's called us to, but in love, in relationship to him. He requires our whole hearts for him and unto him. And he said that we're not doing that perfectly. And that doesn't cost us anything. That's what he said. So that's what he wants from us, which is our hearts, our attention. You know, when the word says to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, it's just telling you to just see him and see him only through everyone and everything. And that's how you give God praise and glory and worship through your life. It's not a religious thing. It's really that simple. And he just put that in my heart just now. I didn't even know that before he told me. So yeah, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. It's him through everything here. It's not just things. And that was always his issue, what he's put in my heart, when it comes to, people serving the creature rather than the creator. Things that are here, it's just frustrating for him because it's like, man, y'all are putting a lot of power and, giving these things I made the glory. And it's like, I made those things. It's me through those things that give it life, It's people they go crazy over like these vegan diets, and they're chasing they're making food their god for health, and it's like, I'm the one who put the life in these foods to make it life for your bodies. I deserve that glory, not food, not mere creatures, not idols. So he just feels like disrespected, just kind of dishonored, and just just neglected. I always feel like he just feels like just ignored, just pushed, to, I mean, you wouldn't want to feel that way. That would hurt you. If you're just using, let's say you're somebody, you're a king and you have different servants, and you want to get a letter through to somebody, or you want to, send a love letter or help somebody get out of prison or something, and you send, a couple soldiers like, hey, I want you to go do this for me. So who's saving you? Is it the soldier, or is it the king that sent the soldier? It's the king. It's the king that wants to come get you. It's the king that has a message for you, not the person. The person is just a servant. Thank them for being yielded and obedient to work for the king, and, to get through to you through them. But it's not them. It's him from his throne that's doing that stuff, that wants your attention, your undivided attention at that. So, yeah, he's put in my heart that we give a lot of honor and glory to just things. And I do feel the sense that he will not tolerate it, but I don't really feel like any anger. It's nothing like that. It's just, he just feels very dishonored. It's a disrespect, but it's like a passionate disrespect. Like it hurts his heart type of disrespect. Because this is somebody that cares about you very intimately and very personally, not just somebody that's a head over you, that's demanding, a certain type of respect, which he does, deserve that, and he requires that as well, but he loves you too. So, that's it. And of course it's upsetting, when you get that from the world as well. That's what they're mainly going to do. They're always going to serve the creature rather than the creator. They don't know him. But for those of us who do, we don't have any excuse to be doing that. And we don't mean to, but that is something that was on his heart that he wanted to share. And it's going to help us be free in him as well, because a lot of us are just not free because we're bound to our idols. Sometimes you can just be bound to people. You got people bondage. Offense keeps you from the presence of God because you keep putting your trust in man rather than the Father. And that's the only reason why you're still in bondage to unforgiveness and stuff. Like, sometimes it's not even a spirit. You ain't got to go through some deep deliverance session. Like, oh, brother, I just can't get this unforgiveness out of my heart. It's like, well, have you ever just, considered putting your heart back on the Lord and show this person grace, because they can't really do anything apart from him, and they're probably not doing what they're doing to you intentionally. No, I didn't think about that. Thank you. Yeah, that's what it is. That's it. So a lot of us are just, unforgiveness and stuff like that keeps you out of God's presence. It doesn't produce any peace in your heart because your attention is on man and not him. It really has nothing to do with what the person did to you. It's just your attention is on what they did to you and not him. I guess it will help us see it this way. You need to see your enemies and the wicked, or just people who don't have, God in their lives, as like a poor beggar. Like literally envision it right now. Close your eyes and listen to my voice as I do ASMR. I'm not going to do that. So just picture a poor beggar, an elderly beggar on the street. And you go to the king and you say, King, Lord, this beggar has offended me. you know, Whatever the beggar did, okay? Maybe just his presence is offending you. And then Jesus looks at the beggar and he can clearly see he's not somebody that knows the Lord. He's just dirty, he's filthy, and then he just looks at you and he says, okay, go and give him this blanket, which, the blanket turns out being a blanket of grace. Because the guy, he doesn't know the Lord. He can't give you what he doesn't have. And Jesus can obviously see that. So I don't even think Jesus would necessarily be offended by the person. It really depends. But give the person, the blanket of grace, and maybe some, revelation of understanding will come upon them. And they'll be more open to the presence and the Spirit of God. They did not mean to hurt you. They didn't mean to offend you with what they did. He's trying to get us to see that they can't love you perfectly the way the Torah instructs us to love people unless they're abiding in Him. That's it. It doesn't go any deeper than that. So it does, it brings more light to, scriptures like, pray for those who despitefully use you, love your enemies, things like that. They don't have any kind of blanket of grace. They don't have any covering at that. You should actually pity your enemies. You should pity just the wicked in general. It's just really sad how reprobate some people will become because they don't have the glory of the Father in their lives. And that's what you see with the wicked. They're completely uncovered to the point where you can feel the darkness. That's why they keep offending you like that. It's just, His presence is not there at all. They're completely taken over by these toxic, unclean spirits. So you should pity these people. I'm not saying that like, oh, I pity you. Like, no, not like that. Like, really, no, pray for them, seriously. That's really sad to be in a condition like that. I just see it as a starving child, like an infant just starving, like in a corner somewhere. Like, they don't have no food, no nourishment. The person is just, the wicked people around us that don't know the Father, they literally are a literal depiction right before you of what it looks like to be completely destitute of God's love, just His Spirit. Like, they're dead. They really are dead. You should pity people like that. Like, this is what happens to you spiritually when you are away from the presence of God. You literally rot and decay. You become this strange creature, and Satan just feasts on you. It's really, and all these demons just inhabiting the people, making them the toxic individual that they are. Pray for them. It's sad to see that happen to somebody spiritually, and then to know why. Because they don't have any knowledge of God's grace or His love or any personal acknowledgement of Him at all. They need that. So sometimes people may not even get it unless we pray for them. I really do believe that some people God legally probably can't do certain things for because they're bound by like legalities like generational curses and stuff. So I think that Jesus instructing us to pray for our enemies is probably what opens up that window legally for Him to do what's already in His heart to do for them. But I think He can't do it legally because they're bound by different stuff. And when you're bound by generational curses, I think that some generational curses upon people, like their bloodlines and stuff, I think it actually can block you even further from God's presence, like any acknowledgement at all. Because I just think about Cain. Because like when the Father cursed Cain, He did make him a vagabond, but there was something else that He said. Like he was marked and just, it said that He sent him away from the presence of the Lord. So that means that Cain's punishment wasn't even really just leaving the territory. Like he never was in God's presence again. And like, you kind of think like, well, weren't they already kind of out of God's presence? Like, they got kicked out of Eden. Like, yeah, they were kicked out of fellowship, but they still had some access to him. No, Cain got removed permanently from God's presence. Like, he literally became just a shell to be feasted on by the enemy, because that's what he chose to turn to. So there are some generational curses where people are so bound up in the mind, and they're so wicked. Y'all know, like, you already got some people popping up as I'm talking. You know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? They just off the chain. And you just look at them like in perplexity, like, how can somebody even be like that? Like, that's just reprobation. Like, yeah, it's a curse. There is a curse that does exist to where somebody cannot even perceive the knowledge or the presence of God at all unless it's broken somehow. And I think that's why Jesus encourages us to pray for our enemies, because most of your enemies will be those people under those kinds of curses. And sometimes he probably can't legally show them a certain amount of grace because they are bound by certain covenants. But what our prayers can do is, because of his relationship to us as Israel, he can, cover them, or he can begin to work in their lives on our behalf due to us standing in the gap for them. And I think that's in his heart to do for everybody, because the earth is just filled with people who are like laden with generational curses, and I don't think that pleases God at all. He has to implement it because he's just, but I don't think he just wants to see a lot of people rotting and spiritually decaying all over the place. Like, that's why he says, pray for your enemies. The more toxic, the more prayer they need. I think that's why he got specific. Like, if they slander you, if they're despitefully using you, so it's kind of like Jesus saying in modern language, oh, is that bad? Okay, well, really pray for them. Like, that's like the worse the detail that you come to him about what they did to you to offend you, the more deeper the spiritual bondage is that you realize in that person's life. Like, they have no perception of God at all. It's really sad. You shouldn't want to see somebody spiritually decaying. Pray for them. Pray for your enemies. If they choose to reject God, some people he's already turned over to reprobate mind, which is why they're like that. But in that case, he'll more than likely instruct you not to pray for them because they already made their choice. God's not going to make somebody reprobate unless they already chose. It's different, But anyway, I have more to talk to him about. I hope that y'all are blessed by this word, and I encourage you to just, initiate your own conversations with Jesus. Get your notepad out, get your phone out, start typing, what he says to you, and just enjoy the peace that he puts into your heart, and, meditate on these truths. And I encourage you to continue to walk in grace with yourself and with others, and, just encourage you to just love one another, because Christ has loved you. And I will see y'all, I don't know when, because it took all my videos down, but I'm going to leave these two up. So y'all have a blessed day.